Welcome to day two. Our evening session is here. We're going to play Android profile as we go on, and then also as sorry. And then also as the team comes, we'll have Andre's profile play next.
Andre Holmes is also known as Active Dad. He is the father to 3 children ages 4, 3 and 1. He started my Active Dad platform because he saw a huge need for a change in the society when it comes to parenting. He had seen a lot of mothers talk about respectful parenting, but not many fathers. His goal is to encourage fathers to take an active role in their children's lives. Ladies and gentlemen, Andre Holmes.
Okay, so we have Andrea Holmes in the studio and we have Chedoze in the studio. I'm going to take a bow. Chedoze, over to you. Andrew Holmes is also in the studio. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I can't see Andrea Holmes.
He's right in the studio.
Okay.
He's here. Yes, please.
Can you see me now? Oh, there he is. Okay. All right. Can you see me now?
Hello, Mr. Andre. Yes,
How you
we
doing?
can see you.
Awesome.
Very well, thank you. And you? Yeah. All right, so tonight we have you on the show. I can see you're very passionate about helping fathers. So I'll let you do your.
So you want me to just kind of go on some topics that are important to me, or is it going to be more of a Q&A where I can answer some questions you guys can lead me into conversation?
Okay, sure. You can go ahead and then we'll follow up with questions. I'll let you just do a brief talk about fathers, your passion for fatherhood and the importance of fathers in the life of the 21st century child.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you're breaking up just a little bit, but I was able to make out what you said. But basically, my name is Andre Holmes. I live in a small town called Kannapolis, North Carolina. If you're familiar with Charlotte, North Carolina, we're about 20 minutes from Charlotte, North Carolina. But my platform is called Active Dad, AKTIVEDAD. And basically, I started this platform as I continue to learn more about conscious parenting and intentional parenting, gentle parenting. It's all somewhat interchangeable, but I realized I wanted to follow this style of parenting to instill values and to continue to work on myself as I'm raising my children. Very, very early on, I have 3 boys. I have a 4, 3, and a 1-year-old. And when my firstborn was maybe around 12 months or so, we were getting into that stage where he was getting into things a lot. And, you know, the way I was raised was, you know, you do something wrong, you get punished for it immediately. And there really isn't really any, you know, going over the backstory or asking the child what they're, you know, what they were thinking, or no grace was really given there a lot of the time. So when my first son started getting into things at that age, I responded the way I was taught growing up. So, you know, a pop on the hand, something like that. But it didn't feel right. So it's something in me knew that punishing my child in that way was just, it wasn't natural. It didn't come naturally. And I felt bad. I felt guilty. And I think a lot of people, you know, depending on what you believe or whatnot, you feel justified in doing those things. But we got to think about the long-term relationship with our child. And I think a lot of the times when we're trying to discipline our child, we're thinking of the short term result. So if we can think about the long term relationship with our child, you know, if this moment of spilled milk or spilled water on the floor, if nobody gets hurt, nobody's bleeding, nobody is dying, then we can come to this situation with a lot more grace than we do. And um, so that's what my whole platform is about, is basically going through different scenarios and trying to help parents in general, but especially dads, to handle these situations with more grace and not just such a punitive, you did wrong, so this is the consequence. Trying to treat them like our kids as little adults. You know, they're trying to learn. We can't expect them to know right from wrong. They've only been on this earth 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I mean, up until about age 25, honestly, that's when the logical part of the brain is fully developed. So that's where your facts come in, your right and your wrongs. You know, you should be all set by that time. But until then, you're just going to need a lot of grace, a lot of guidance, until you get to that place. So I think that's the that's mostly, you don't expect to get to know their right from wrong too. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, I think maybe right, exactly. Um, so yeah, I always think about, you know, how old was I when I stopped making mistakes? You know, I'm still making them sometimes. You know, it's just a part of life. But you have to be the one that's in your kid's corner until the day they die. You know, hopefully you go before them. But anyways, you got to be their number one cheerleader. You got to be the person to, you know, give them some correction when they need it, a listening ear. But you always got to stay on your side. Your kids should never get to a point where, you know, you feel like they've disappointed you beyond repair, because it's not about you. It's about them and raising them in the world that they are growing up in. We can't raise them in the world that we grow up in. I am, you know, I'm about to be 30 this year. I grew up in the 90s, and things are definitely different, you know. So as far as my relationship with my father was very passive. He was not very active in the home. I will always say to people, you know, I know that maybe somebody else's dad was never in the picture, but my father was not really emotionally or physically involved, even though he was there my whole childhood. He just didn't really engage with us that much. And that's part of our relationship that I really missed growing up. So when it comes to my relationship with my kids, I am very, very, very intentional about spending that one-on-one time with them and doing some things that they're interested in. I was rushing to get on live right now because we were coming back down the highway from a BMX race. So they're practicing BMX biking, if you guys know what that is. But they really love riding bikes. And, you know, at first, my oldest was doing soccer and he quit because he said he didn't want to do it. So me, you know, I really wanted him to not quit, but I have to think, you know, do I continue to do things that I absolutely hate that somebody else obligated me to? No. So we found out what he really likes, and he really likes to ride bikes. So now we're going to invest time into that. And now that it's his choice, I'm going to encourage him that he's got to stick with it and not quit. And obviously that hasn't been an issue as of late because that's his passion. So all that to say, I'm trying to do a whole lot better with my kids and make sure that when they look back on their childhood, they're able to say, ah, man, I love the way my dad raised me. I love all the things we did together. So yeah, and I know they care more about time spent with me than any amount of money that I could bring home to them. So I'm really intentional about spending that quality time with them.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. Great points there.
You got a question for me?
Relationship with kids.
Say that again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I hear you. You speak a lot about grace and how that affects our relationship with our kids. I like to hear you talk about where the balance is, because that's where most of the people have a problem. How do we balance the concept of grace and the concept of discipline?
Got it. Yes, sir. Um, so like he was asking me to explain um, the balance between grace and discipline. And
Yeah.
discipline doesn't have to mean punishment. Discipline means more of a discipleship. So when you think about, in the Bible and Christ discipling his disciples, he did not smack them around to teach them right from wrong. He gave them parables. He gave them things to think about. He gave them examples. He gave them, reasons. He showed them examples of different situations, and that's what we can do with our children. When they're doing something wrong, basically you have three different types of consequences. You have punishments, you have logical consequences, and you have natural consequences. So a quick scenario would be a kid spills water on the floor, right? A punishment would be something that's not related to what just happened whatsoever. So a punishment would be, hey, go to your room. You're not getting any TV or video games for a whole month, and your own punishment. So this is something that, the kid did something and now you're giving them a punishment, and it has nothing to do with what just happened. So instead of them learning what to do next time, what to do better next time, all they've learned is that once they mess up, you're just going to punish them. I mean, you go from them learning a lesson to you just being the bad guy. And the kids, they're not able to, they're not mature enough to understand, what that punishment even is for, honestly, because up until about the age 7, they don't really have too much impulse control. So when a kid does something and you ask them, why did you do that? They're not going to have a good answer for you whatsoever, because that impulse control, their brain says to do something, like it's just going to happen, and then you got to handle it from there. Um, and then, so that same scenario, kid spills water on the floor. Uh, a logical consequence is a consequence that comes from a provider, so a parent or a grandparent. So the logical consequence would be, hey, let's go ahead and get some towels so we can clean this up. Do you want one towel or two towels? Do you want me to help you or not help you? So giving your kid options is a great way for them to learn that when you make a mess, you got to clean it up. And also, it gives them options to not feel like you're just coming down on them really hard and just telling them what to do. You're making them get involved and, activating that part of their brain to where, okay, I have options. I have a say in what this situation is. And then the last one is natural consequences, which means nature. Nature is going to beat up your kid, all their whole life. The world is cruel, and you don't have to be cruel to try to teach them that the world is going to be cruel, because it's going to be cruel no matter what. You got to stay in your kid's corner and be their biggest supporter. So a natural consequence when the kid spills water on the floor would be he accidentally steps in it and slips and falls. You didn't have to do anything for that to happen. That was just a natural consequence of something that they did. So natural consequences, you don't have to do anything. And then logical consequences is basically to try to help cultivate the thought process that the kid has when they do something wrong. And that is disciplining that we want to do. We don't have to go into punishments where it's not related to anything. So giving your child a spanking or anything like that, it's never related, because even if they hit somebody that they're not supposed to, and they think, and you think a logical consequence is to hit them, it doesn't make any sense. I can't hit my kid to teach them not to hit other people. All I'm teaching my kid at that point is you are allowed to hit somebody as long as you're bigger than them and you have more control. That's really what
Oh
you're
yeah.
teaching the kid. if you're trying to hit them to teach them not to hit. It cancels each other out. And a lot of people, for some reason, they can't see that for some reason, because, you know, that's how they grew up, and they have that bias in their head that, you know, I was raised, you know, with spankings and things like that, and I turned out okay. But I'm like, you're the exception, you're not the rule. Because we all know that studies have proved, you know, when you're going through those things as a child, you actually become more aggressive and more rebellious and all those things. So, yeah.
Interesting. 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 The three kinds of consequences. That's a great one for me. Um, so I'd like to take you up on that a little bit more, talking about consequences and how young people deal with consequences. How do we begin to prepare as fathers, prepare our children for the fact that life is going to deal with you? Because there's this kind of decline in grit, decline in the readiness of a young man to deal with the vicissitudes of life. So how do we begin to prepare the young person as a father? What is the role of a father in preparing the young person to deal with the issues of life? Because they're going to come. You just said that right now. Life is just going to do. You don't have to do anything for it to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the best that one of the ways we can prepare our kids for this world is to let them be close to you when things happen in your life. Obviously, keep it age appropriate, but you know, if something happens, even my 4-year-old, he can understand a lot of situations already, and it's crazy. He understands social cues and emotional awareness and things like that. But you know, when bad things happen in my life, and they're wondering why I'm upset or why I'm sad or something like that, I try my best to explain it on their level, that this is a part of life, you know. And then when they're going through their own scenarios, instead of just coming in with the hammer, talking about punishments and this and that, um, I think it's a fine line, there's a fine balance between, you know, disciplining your kid and teaching them how the world is. You basically have to come at it like, you know, I know you did this thing wrong, and this is what we could do better, but I'm still gonna love you. And once they start to experience little things here and there, out in the world, then like even on the playground, things happen. All you have to do is be there to guide them through it. Don't bring your own emotions into it. Don't bring any more anger or energy into it. Because I mean, even at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, you get pushed on the playground and you fall down. Like that's how real life is. You're going to get pushed down. It's about how you respond after you get pushed down that is going to take you far in your life. So teaching your kids how to respond and modeling that in your everyday life. You know, if somebody does me wrong, I got to think about, you know, do I have the strength to put my pride down? One, and then secondly, what example am I setting for my child who is watching my every move? Because they're not going to listen to what I'm saying; they're going to be doing what I'm doing. So if somebody does me wrong, somebody pushes me down, how do I want my kid to act when it happens to them? That's the way that I need to model. So when you say how do we prepare our kids, I think you almost get a chance to do that every day, almost, because you know most of us, we get tested in some way, shape, or form. You know, once a day, every week, something like that. And if you're around your kids, they will be able to see it, and then they'll know how you respond. If you respond in anger every time, guess what? You're teaching your kid this is how you respond. If you and your wife are arguing, and then they don't see you reconcile, then they're gonna think that that's how love is. That's how a relationship is supposed to go. So they need to see the full spectrum of everything. Me and my wife, I mean, if I'm being honest with you, we were having an argument in the car, and by the end of it, you know, we apologized to each other, but our child was right there to see the whole thing. So it's not. A lot of people think that, oh, gentle parenting is just, you know, permissive parenting, which it is definitely not. We have those boundaries in place, but just letting them see real life stuff, but also letting them see the resolution. Apologizing to our kids when we get out of line, if we yell, because we're having a bad day. So yeah, just being real with them, being upfront. Don't use any nicknames. Don't use any cutesy whatevers. Like, hey, this is what happened. I apologize. This person hurt my feelings. It made me feel like this. So just narrating your life. I think that's the best way I could put it. Narrate your life for your kid. The good, the bad, and the ugly. That's what's going to prepare them the most, in my opinion, for the real world.
Interesting. You just made a great point there. Gentle parenting is not permissive parenting. And there's something you said that keeps coming up since the beginning of this conference, and that is that parents need to begin to learn to apologize to their children. Why is it that parents, it's a hard thing for parents to do? Like, we'll never do wrong or something like that.
Right. I mean, I grew up in a culture, even here in America, the parents, they don't apologize. They can't do wrong. They won't do wrong. And even when they know mentally that they did wrong, they're not going to voice it to you. Even if you catch them up in a situation, they're not going to apologize. But basically, apologizing to your kid is the first step to teach your kid how to apologize, to be remorseful, to be empathetic to other people's situations, to whatever they did. So if I do something wrong and then I don't apologize to whoever I did the wrong to, my kid is not going to know that's the proper response to, whatever. So when I one of my notes here, it says, check your stress level at the door. And what that means is I have to evaluate what my stress level is before I come home, from work, because I got all that stuff on my shoulders. And if I bring it on in the house, that spilled cup of water is going to just set me off that day. And now I'm getting on to people, blah, blah, blah. And then a different day, when I've had a good day, I'll come in and the spilled water will be funny and like, oh, bud, let's clean this up. So I'm sending mixed signals depending on my stress level, and that's not fair to my kid whatsoever. What's fair to my kid is that I have the maturity enough to come in and say, hey, bud, I had a rough day. Let me help you clean up this water. I can still hold back my stressors and not let it affect my parenting. And I think that's the biggest thing that we as parents need to do, and especially as fathers do, because we have a whole nother, we have weight and stressors of our own that doesn't get talked about a lot, especially if you're, a sole provider of the home or a majority provider of the home. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. You're trying to feed your family, keep the bills paid and things of that nature. And a lot of times when you have a bad day, you want to come home and not talk to anybody, or you want to make sure you want your kids to just behave and listen for once. Like, that's not it. We decided to have these children. We did the things to make these children, and we have to treat them with as much respect as we are hoping to get back from them when they're actually old enough to reciprocate it. And I think it's just ridiculous to think that this 2 or 3 year old knows, how are we going to teach our child respect without modeling it to them first? So when I say apologizing to your kid, if I yell at them for something that, I shouldn't have, and I shouldn't be raising my voice whatsoever, I can still talk to them in a normal voice and get my point across. But I decided to add emotion into it and yell at them. That's when I need to apologize. So, if I'm having a stressful, because I own my own business here, if I'm having a stressful week, sometimes the apology tour that I have to go on through my house is sometimes it goes a second round, 2 or 3 rounds. I'm just apologizing to everybody. But I think it's important for my kids to see that, daddy's stressed out. He's having a bad week, bad day, but he comes in and apologizes. He knows he shouldn't be yelling or anything like that. So with my platform, I'm just real about it all. I talk about my struggles. I've talked about the time that I slipped up and I did, swap my kid's leg for something they did. And I realized what my triggers were. And at that point, I was really, really sick. And they did something, and I had a lack of impulse control and a lack of constraint in my emotions at that moment. And I did swap both of them on the leg. And that's something I haven't done, in years and years, since my firstborn was like 12 months old or something, like years and years. But that was one of my triggers. I found out is that when I'm sick, when I'm physically like fever, whatever sick, I have very short, I guess, uh, emotional strength. So I have to take that into consideration. So I need to ask my partner, my wife, to be like, hey, I'm not feeling good. Let me go get some rest. A lot of times, when you wake up in the morning, you have to decide to love is an action word. It's a choice. So when it comes to my wife or my kids, I have to wake up and make the decision to love and to gentle parent my children every single day. I can't. The more you try to put your emotions into it and you try to parent off of how you feel, you're going to fail every time. And I feel like you're not going to notice those failures right away. You're going to notice it when they're 15, 16, 17, 18. There's older people who don't speak to their parents at all. I mean, I went through a time where I wasn't speaking to my parents, and my wife went through a period where she wasn't speaking to hers. And, there's just a lot of miscommunication of, I think in the times that we have done that, where we had to not talk to our parents, was basically because our parents couldn't admit anything wrong that they had ever done. And your kids want you to acknowledge, even though you were doing your best, it still doesn't mean that it was the best for the person you were doing it for. And I have to remember that I'm going to still make mistakes, and my kids are going to. I couldn't hear what you said. My kids are going to tell me, "Hey, Dad, I didn't appreciate when I was 17 and you did this and this." I'm waiting for that day. I'm expecting that day, and I want to really hear from their point of view how things went down. And then I can take that moment, take a deep breath and be like, wow, son, I didn't know you felt that way. Let me explain to you why I did that or where I was thinking during that time. Because obviously they don't see the whole picture, but they didn't know, grandma just passed away and, you just lost your job during that time and you were about to get evicted from the house and all of that. And I can give them that peace to be like, wow, okay, I really did feel, offended at that point, Dad, but I didn't know that you were going through all that. Thank you for telling me. Now I can heal and move on. Your children now, your children when they are teenagers and your children when they're 30, 40 years old, they still need that closure from when they were growing up. And if a parent can give that gift to their child of that acknowledgement of their feelings, I mean, the whole world would change if we could all get that from our parents. You know what I mean? You're like, hey, I know you were trying your best, but this hurt my feelings. And if you respond and say, I was doing the best I could, you didn't grow up, with no food on the table and blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't have the room to complain. No, just acknowledge the feelings. Wow, I didn't know you felt that way. I was just doing what my dad had taught me. Can you tell me more about how you felt? That validation is so healing. I mean, you could heal the rest of your generational lineage just by validating your child's feelings. But I hope that answers the question. When you get me
That
going,
is
I'll
so
just
good.
talk.
That is just so good. This whole concept about grace, that is just so good. The fact that we all make mistakes, and if we can just cut the kids some slack, that they too are having some issues understanding things. That is just so good. That is just so good. And it brings me to something very important. The fact that um, this issue about emotional intelligence and its role in parenting. Um, I think it's something that we've talked about it a bit, but maybe not enough. That we all need some kind of guidance or training in emotional intelligence. How do I You just said something that struck me. Check your stress level before you get home. Check your stress level. So how do I make sure that I'm not, because most of the time these are issues of transferred aggression. It's probably not like the example you keep using is the spilled water on the floor. It's probably not the water that is the issue, because the same scenario could be funny tomorrow. So it's obviously not the issue. So how do we do this whole thing about learning emotional intelligence and being able to keep our stress levels in check?
Um, I think the more knowledge, the better. So when you read some of these gentle parenting books, conscious parenting books, and reading the different scenarios or listening to the podcast, I'm not a big reader. I will listen to a book on Audible all day long when I'm driving between jobs. That's how I retain information better. So understanding the way that a child's mind and brain works definitely helps. And then as far as us figuring out how to balance our stress level, I mean, it's really a balance, and it's a balance every single day that you got to try to figure out. But I think trying to address those things that are stressing me out, that's how we can come home more often in the right mindset. So for me personally, when I was working for a company, I had the last company I worked for. You know, I took a leave when my kid was born, my first son, and by the end of that 2 weeks or so, when I had to go back to work, as I'm closing the door to go back to work after my kid was born, I just started crying and bawling, and because I didn't want to leave. And from that moment, I told myself, I don't want anybody else to tell me when I can and can't be here for my child or with my child or spend time with them. So a few months later, I just up and quit my job, and I had started a business maybe a month ago, and then done 3 or 4 jobs, and just on faith and just a risk, I just quit and did the full time of my business, and it was hard and it was a struggle. But now I'm at a place 4 years later where I can control, how much time I have off, how much money I can bring in. So that stuff, lessening your stress, if you're stressed about money, you got to put in the work to try to figure out how to make more money so you're not stressed about it and you don't come home with it. If you're stressed about, somebody giving you stress, some friend or some family member, you got to make that sacrifice to cut them out, because it's not worth the relationship with your child. I think your children, other than your spouse, should come first, and you need to be thinking about, how do I preserve this relationship for the long haul? And if I can't balance my stress levels, how am I supposed to teach them how to do it? So just working on things outside of your parenting, I believe, is the most important, because there's a lot of things that we as adults deal with that we literally don't have to, but you have to, wake up and be like, I don't have to take this crap from this person. I don't have to have this person in my life because society is telling me that, oh, if you disrespect your mom or your grandma or your sister or your brother, and I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but I mean, you just don't do that type of stuff. But if that person is toxic in your life, to me, I don't care who you are. I gotta keep this mind clear. I gotta keep it positive. I gotta keep it going in the right direction so that I can come home and I can treat my children the way that they deserve to be treated. Because every time I step out of line, it has nothing to do with them. I mean, they're so innocent. They're not out there stealing and killing and robbing. They're spilling water and push his brother every once in a while. Like, these are not huge issues, but when you bring the huge issues and your stress from the outside into your parenting, those things look magnified. And now they're like, you pushed your brother, you're going to be a freaking bully when you get up. Like, no, like when you get older, like, no, like you're bringing more stress into the situation when you don't need to. So I think us as adults, we actually have to be mature enough to check our stress level. Like, what is causing us the most stress? You know, if it's your marriage, you need to go do some counseling. Go read a therapy book together, read it together, get into the word some more, the Bible, whatever you could do. Start working on repairing that marriage so that your kids don't have to feel the brunt of that. So I think it's a lot of different avenues, but if you could just work on your stress level um, outside of your parenting, then your parenting won't be so stressful.
Mm. Oh wow, oh wow! Thank you so much. I've been making notes and trying to catch up with some of the things that you have said. Um, we parents trying to deal with themselves, and you mentioned something very important to me is the place of accountability. And what do you think? Because talking about stresses now, as men, um, we're not big on talking about issues. We're not big on talking about things that bother us. And so that's also why some of the times we transfer aggression. So most times when a man is reacting to something, it's probably not that at that event. There are some other factors that are influencing what he's doing. So, but how do we get into that space where we can talk, where we can, even when you talked about counseling, a lot of men don't like to go to counseling.
Right.
I don't know. So, how do we get into
Um,
that space where we can ease off? Just in the previous sessions today, we were talking about um, connecting with other men in other kinds of networks where we can, talk about stuff. I wanted to lend your voice to that. What do you think?
I think having a friend or a circle of friends who are on the same mindset on you, same mindset of just trying to grow and be better, is important. I think it's harder nowadays to have friends who are on uh, the same thought process as you, because a lot of us
Yeah.
are different thinkers. And me and you, if you lived here in Charlotte, we could probably be best of friends, but that's not reality. You know what I mean? The your
Yeah, sure.
tribe is everywhere else but where you live a lot of the times, and it can be hard to find your tribe basically. I recently um, have linked up with two other guys who are in the same industry as me, as far as the business goes, and they live far enough away to we're not competitors or anything, but we are allowed to talk about the stress of business, growing the business. So that helps a whole lot. um, but other than that, I just think digging deep down within yourself and realizing what your issues are is so important. Um, and a lot of parents won't do this, but this is what I do with my kids. Hey, Jackson, how have I been as a dad lately? What can I do better? And recently, the trend has been telling me, stop getting mad at me, stop yelling at me. And I have to take that. I take it so that I can continue to try to work on it and be better. But your
Mm,
kids are
mm,
going to be honest with you. They have no filter, like
mm.
no filter. And it could have been only one day this week where I got a little upset, but that's the point. That's the time that they'll bring up. But it's just a constant reminder. This is what my kid cares about. This is what's affecting my kid the most. So, but even now, like Jackson, he'll be like, last time I asked him that, he said, when you get mad at me or when you yell at me, and I say, I'm going to work on that. And he said, even though you do those things, I still love you. So,
Wow.
so he understands that we all as a family are allowed to have weak moments. But the fact that I've been instilling in them that it's okay for me to apologize to you, and it's okay for you to apologize to me, and we can still love each other at the end of the day. I don't think I could do anything more than that, is to teach them that people who love each other can have weak moments and we can come back and reconcile things. It doesn't have to be permanent damage. So yeah, I think if we can teach our children that, like, and that's about apologizing, going back to apologizing to our kids, modeling that we can apologize and still love each other. Because I can yell at you and then apologize and then go fix you your snack, like let's move on, I think, with me and my wife, we used to fight back in the day or have an argument or something, and it would just last all day. And now, being in our 8th year of marriage and 10 years together, we get in an argument, and within like 2 minutes, we'll be like, you done talking about this? Because I'm ready to move on. Let's do something positive and happy, because we're just like, we know that it's a waste of time now, like, so we reconcile extremely quick now. And I think that's really awesome. But yeah, I think just trying to have some people who are, and this is in the age of technology, we don't have an excuse not to try to connect with other people. So you got Facebook groups, you have FaceTime, you have things like that. Reach out to some people or find your tribe so that you can offload to your tribe and they can understand what you're going through. And then maybe that'll help you get in that space that you're talking about, so you don't have to come home with it. And then the last thing I'll say is hobbies. So one of my hobbies is to go to the gun range. I went, a couple days ago. That's kind of my me time. That's my unload there and, be better. Some people like to go fishing. Some guys like to do woodwork, just I think it's important for everybody to have their time. Dads need their time by themselves. Mom needs their time by themselves. Mom and dad need time together by themselves. And then the family needs to have time together for themselves. So it's about being intentional about this thing that we have called time. Because I think everybody needs a break from everybody. And then I think everybody, needs time together. And just keeping that balance so that nobody feels the need to just blow up for no reason,
Mm, mm, mm. And I like the fact about taking feedback, having to get feedback from the kids. Like you're doing something, you want to be sure
Yeah.
what you're doing is right or wrong. That's so important. So Andre, I want to take you up on something. You live in a culture, because we're discussing active participation in the children's life as a father. You live in a culture, well, it's all over the place, but particularly where you stay is where we have the whole concept of absentee fathers, runaway fathers, single motherhood, single parenting, whatever that means. Um, why do you think men run? Why do you think we bolt out of responsibilities? Because that is going to have, it is already having a great impact on the kind of children that we're raising now, and
Right.
what the next generation is going to be able to life.
I think,
So
excuse me, I
what do you
think
think is happening?
um, with that answer to that question, I think some of it, and there's a few different variables, but I think some of it goes back years ago here in America where especially the black women were incentivized with food stamps and welfare and things of that nature, and they were told you cannot bring another man into this household or we'll take these benefits away. So that mindset has formulated over the years into continued mothers not allowing the father to even be a part of the child's life because the government has them on this. If you get this other income in, you get another man in here, then you don't qualify for these food stamps and this welfare and this financial help. So I think that mindset has carried over for decades, to where you have even some bitter women who don't even allow their fathers to be a part of their child's life, even when they're actively trying to. And they make it more about their failed relationship than the successful relationship that all of them can have with the children. So I think that's one thing there. The second thing, as far as absentee fathers, um, I think in our society we're trying to, I don't know, we're trying to take the definition of being a man away. Um,
Mm,
and I think that, there's this thing called toxic masculinity here, that it really doesn't exist, honestly. because there's nothing toxic about a man being masculine. And I understand when people say like, oh, like I don't let my kid wear pink because that's for girls and blah blah blah. No, I'm not gonna pump that into my kid. Like that's unnecessary. They're a kid. So that color, my oldest son's favorite color is pink and blue. Like I'm not about to tell him that these colors have a gender assigned to them or anything like that. But I'm also not gonna let him walk out in public dressed any differently than I allow him to dress, because I believe that, you know, as a man, we have to, masculinity is important, and that's the way that we're going to feel fulfill our role in this world, is to, you know, if we're born, if we are a man, that's how we're supposed to be. And all I'm going to do is cultivate and mature my sons into being young men. But I can't do that, obviously, if I'm not here. I have to set the example. But I think in our society, they're trying to, and I don't know how much, I mean, I'm live, but I don't know how much I'm allowed to go into, but they're trying to feminize our men to the point where I don't think that we can even get to the being a father part, because we're trying to be something totally different. Like we're trying to eradicate us being men in general.
Being men,
and,
yeah.
Right. So, you know, being the provider and being all these things in the household, like we're taking a whole step further. So first you incentivize us not to be there, and now you're putting all this propaganda out there for us to be something totally different that we're not. So, I mean, we got to start there and then get back to being in the home. But I think some dads just don't know maybe where to even begin, because in our society, you're just told that you don't change diapers because you're the man. You don't do this, you're the man. Like, no, like you change diapers, you get up in the middle of the night, you're there when your kid is sick, if you're able to be there. You have just as much of a role in that relationship as possible. If your wife is breastfeeding, there's so much other things that you can do to support your wife in that. Like, you know, there's so much that you could do. And I think there are a lot of men just don't have the representation in the public to see, you know, what they're supposed to do. So that's what my platform is for. I'm a Black man being very active in my child's life to show you can do this too. It's not that hard. So I think, you know, through media and movies and music, we get this idea that you have the choice to be in your child's life or not. And that's not how it should be.
Interesting. I was just looking out to see if we have any question from the comment. I see someone is asking for some examples of support groups. I'd like you to share, but let me also say that the inner circle of the Intentional Parent Academy is also a place where you can find great support. Other parents are on the platform, and so you can reach out to the TIP Academy and discuss how to get on the inner circle program. But Andre, I'd like you to talk about, you know, this kind of support groups. Where can men find support groups to you know, to join or to find strength? We talked about releasing stress and talking about their stresses. Give us some examples of other support groups that men can begin to look out for.
I don't have many. Like I said, you could join our page at Active Dad on Facebook and our group. We have a private group, and then I have a page on there as well. And we can, you know, answer and talk about personal things there. Other than that, I mean, the Intentional Parent, I mean, that's a great resource as well. But a lot of it, I mean, it's super hard. I mean, I think it's harder now than, because we're also doing, we're not asking you, me and you, we're not asking the people watching this to be just a part of their kid's life, because you can be a part of it in the wrong way. We're trying to ask you to be there, and then be there the right way, or the way that's going to benefit your kid the most. So we're asking for a lot, and so that's why I think that they need that person that they can watch, either online on TV or talk on the phone with, that that is doing what they set out to do. So as I think I can speak freely here, I think that
Yeah.
um, being the man of the household, you are the one who sets the tone for the entire family. If you believe in being the head of the house as a dad or as a father, or as the man of the house, that doesn't mean that you just come in and start putting the hammer down and punishing people and that. No, what that means is you're the man enough to put your feelings aside so that you can treat everybody in the house with grace and love and mercy. And when your wife is stressed out and this thing is connected to this thing that's connected to this thing, and you're there to decompartmentalize all her things and listen to her and say, hey, we can take care of this, and then we can take care of that, and then we can do that. You're there for your kids to show them that being the man of the house means that you got your act together. That's what being the leader and the man of the house is about. It's not about being super macho and having big muscles and be able to smack everybody around. It's about being mature in your emotions to be able to set the tone. So my wife knows, like, women, they go through up and downs as far as emotionally and, things monthly or whatever. Men have the luxury to be stable almost all the time. Like, we can be
Mm.
consistent, and God has given that to us, and then we can either abuse it or use it to our advantage. And we have to encourage more men to use it to their advantage, to be the person that comes home to set everything straight with grace. So the kids and the wife can continue to feed off of your energy of calm and peacefulness so that they can get through whatever they need to get through. We as men have that ability to take on all of that, and it definitely helps for us to have other guys to talk to so that we can release that stress. We don't need to release it onto our family within our four walls at home.
Great, great. You just took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to ask you to actually help us define what it means to be a man. But you have just done that in a moment. What it means is not just about being macho and all of that. But there's one more thing as we begin to round up because I think we are running out of time.
Yeah.
So a lot of this conversation has been about the relationship with fathers and their children. But there's this other twist to it, and you just opened up a little bit now, is how the relationship with your spouse affects the children. So I'd like you to talk more maybe on as we wind down on that relationship with that your marriage as itself and how it gets to affect the children, because you cannot love your children and then mistreat your spouse. It doesn't work. Both of them go hand in hand. Yeah.
Right. So for me, what I learned when I was learning about gentle parenting and how to be a better parent, and consequences, natural consequences, um, just all the things about working on myself first and then coming to my children. This allowed me to actually be a better person all around. So a better son, a better brother, a better husband, more importantly. Um, because it teaches you to be more, to use more of your ears and not your mouth, and listen. So I think as far as your marriage goes, having to be very conscious about keeping that relationship strong, and not let that be a whole nother stress that affects your parenting. And like I said earlier, just setting that example of how a relationship should work. All relationships that deal with loving each other have the same basis. Be slow to anger and quick to forgive. But your children need to see all of those things. The only difference between my relationship with my wife and then my relationship with everybody else is what we do in the bedroom. But other than that, that respect level that we have for each other, it needs to transcend through all of our relationships where we claim to love the other person. So I think just setting that example in your marriage is vital. Showing them what a loving couple is, showing them what a couple who may argue sometimes come back and apologize to each other. Just showing them what a real marriage is, showing them what a real love is. Like, you can't do anything better than to just show them, because you can talk all day, you know, and I think when people have a hard time talking to their teenagers or their young adults, and they're like, yeah, you just need to, you know, do this or that in your relationship, and you coming off of your third divorce, they can't take no advice from you. You obviously don't know how this works. So I think we got to take our example, you know, our own life, our own marriage and relationships very seriously, because they're going to do what we do, not do what we say.
True.
You know,
True.
I think
This conversation has honestly been such a blessing, and we can go on and on and on. I'm going to see if Wendy is in the room somewhere and get her back on.
Where's Wendy at? Let's say bye.
No, she's going. She's going to join us in a moment now.
Right.
So let's begin to wind down.
Yes, I am.
Any final thoughts? Okay. All right.
Hey, I'm in here.
Yes, I am.
Wendy, thank you so much for asking me to do this. I was very nervous about it. I didn't really know what to expect, but my wife knows, and I know, when you start talking about something that I'm passionate about, I mean, an hour just flew by. So it was, when you got me started, I could go on forever, but I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much, Andre. That was actually an awesome conversation. And the fact that, you know, Chidoza, I was listening to the conversation in the background, and I was listening to where Andre was talking about how the society is trying to take out the masculinity of the man. And it's something that, you know, really bothers me, really. And, you know, the society is fighting so hard to take away what the man can do. And then I don't know how we got here. I don't know why we are here, but something just needs to change. All right. Thank you for calling attention to that, Andre. It was so on point for me. And it was highly needed, you know, at this conference.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys. You guys need anything else from me, just ask. I'm here. I'll make time for it.
Thank you so much, Andre Holmes. Andre had to put out a lot to be able to be here. We really do appreciate you. We are grateful that you agreed to do this, even though it was a different time zone and all of that. And we hope to see you more, to have conversations on TIP at, you know, more conferences, because I really want a conversation on how we can begin to let the men fight for their masculinity. I don't know why they are keeping quiet. I don't know why, you know, they think it's okay that the society is, you know, it's stifling all of this, and then they are just moving, and it looks okay. And that's what we're having, Chidozie, the kind of conversation that we're having right now in the group, where, you know, the women are now fighting. It's not a war. They're not fighting the man, because the society have told them that the man is no longer needed. I wish we can continue this conversation, but hey, we will need to run to the next conversation this evening, which will be the last. Thank you so much, Andre, and it's such a great time having you.
Thank you guys. Remember, just voice matter.
Oh,
Kids' voice
awesome.
matter.
Yes, kids' voice matter. And that is taking us to the day one, where Taiwo Akinlami said the child is also a person. The child is also
yes, ma'am.
a person.
Okay, I'm going to log off from here. You guys have a blessed day. And
all right. Thank you.
All right, Andre. Thank you for coming around.
Yeah. All right. So, Chidozie, we move to the next session with.
Yeah, sure.
Ebuka. Ebuka is bringing fire to this table today to end this conversation. Ebuka is the one breathing the fire that we are ending with. All right. Chidozie, see you in the next room. And remember, please, to join us. Remember that this is TIP Fathers Conference. Thank you so much for being here.